That's Sally.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Positive Success Show. I have a wonderful guest with me today. Her name is KYLA MITSUNAGA, and she is a dear friend, an awesome coach. She is a mind-blowing results coach. And we've gotten to know each other over the years. I met her originally in South Korea, and she really inspired me in so many ways. KYLA is an author of 2 books. Her first book is With versus At, and also on growing. So these are 2 books that you can check out from KYLA. KYLA, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel so honored and humbled to be on a positive success podcast. Like, wow. Sally and I have made it. This is Sally, everybody. And for those of you on the podcast, Sally is a line friend. She's actually a chick headband that we wear on our heads, and she's always part of everything because she wants to be up in everything.
So for those of you listening, if you want to check out the video, check us out on YouTube. KYLA is awesome right now. She always makes me laugh. KYLA, you're just such a great example of what it is to just live life on your own terms. And no, you really are. And so, like, when you brought out Sally, I'm like, who's Sally? And then you brought out the chick, and I just started laughing. And I'm like, of course. KYLA, can you share with our audience how you got started in this new life as an entrepreneur, as an inspirer, as a speaker, all these things that you do that just really helps people get out of where they're at and become a bigger person. How did you get started?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dom. And likewise, it's been great to see you and your journey and see you evolve. And congrats on your first book. I know it's like a little bit late, but publicly,
the pandemic,
but publicly, congrats on your first book.
Thank you.
And all of your own success and your own terms as well. So the story goes, I was a global happiness coach. I think when you met me, I had started these workshops called the happiness workshops that I created for a speaking gig in Mexico, brought them all over the world to 16 countries across 3 continents. And then the irony was that in my own personal life, my mom was then diagnosed with early onset dementia at the end of 2016. And then I fell into this really, really deep depression. And I knew all this research, on science of happiness, positive psych, neuroscience, you name it, I knew it. And I could workshop the heck out of it, but I could not help myself become happier. And so I quit my really cushy job as a professor in Korea, and I took the year 2017 off and went really, really in. So I, at that time, started writing that first book, With versus At. I hired my first life coach, became a certified life coach, started a pop-up cafe in my apartment. There it is, serving no salt and no sugar dishes and a bunch of other crazy things. But the best thing I did for myself looking back was I ended up at this women's surf yoga retreat in Bali, neither of which I do. So I'm probably the only healer. So I'm also a healer, in addition to a mind-blowing results coach. But I think I'm the only healer I know who is like not vegan, doesn't have some sort of yoga certificate. And yeah, so lots of other things. But anyway, yeah, so on that fateful women's surf yoga retreat, I ended up meeting this energy healer named Sylvia, this Hungarian energy healer that I still actually work with for monthly maintenance, and just was really taken by her, happened to tell her about my nightmares. And now I'm also a subconscious mind expert. Now, in hindsight, looking back as a subconscious mind expert, of course, I wasn't happy. I was having these awful nightmares. And after that first session with her, they went away. And I ended up working on and off with her for 2.5 years, and getting just certified in trying all these alternative healing modalities, like 20 or so, and getting certified in the best ones, and then now bringing that back into the coaching and the other really cool things that I get to do. So yeah, that's the journey.
The journey. What started out as a happiness coach journey, turning into a mixture of multiple different pathways that helps people heal through whatever they need to heal through. It really is, it's really inspiring. And KYLA, as a coach too, like when I think about my journey, it really is for all of us. It's healing through the pains and the hurts and the disappointments and the judgment that we face throughout our whole lives in every arena, right? And
Right.
trying to lift ourselves out of those spaces so that we can be better, can show up better.
Right.
So out of all of your experiences and all the different types of clients that you coach, what has been like a really good foundational framework or philosophy that you carry forth throughout all the work that you do? Because as a subconscious expert coach, as a mind-blowing results coach, as a healer, all of these different ways that you help people, what is your philosophy? What's KYLA's philosophy on being a better human, on healing oneself, on achieving what you want to achieve? All the things that we're after is that feeling of happiness, or I did it, or I'm making progress.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that is really simple, and I'm a big fan of simple, right? Like, because if it's like a complicated theory and I don't understand it, I certainly am not using it to coach. But I'll tell you the story of how it came to be, and then I'll share what it is, and it's really simple. So it's called the AAA method, and it stands for awareness, acceptance, action. And it came to me when I was swimming and crying at the same time. This was sort of my very bottom of when I was really depressed.
Mm.
And I'm a big swimmer, as you know. I start most of my mornings swimming. And this one particular morning, I was really, really depressed and thinking about my mom's early onset dementia. And I was crying in the pool, which it is possible. For those of you who've never tried it, it is possible. So, and then it occurred to me, so I had this really what I call pool epiphany, which is like if pool and epiphany had a baby. And I had this really incredible pool epiphany, which was, wait a second, there's some family members who have not yet, including my mom, accepted that she has dementia. And I would say a lot of us are like aware, but many of us have not accepted it yet, right? That, that middle A. And because of that, we can't really act on anything, right? We can't move forward with like a plan, like put her in a home or do something, or like talk to people, or, so on and so, get her caregivers, so on and so forth, right? And so it occurred to me, this awareness, acceptance, action, right? This AAA method, but then also, looking backwards on this, right? So you can't act on something you don't accept, and you can't accept something that you're not aware of, right? And it really struck me and keeps striking me, when I coach people and they're like, probably struggling on acceptance, the acceptance piece, right? Because it's hard, right? It's hard to accept, hey, we have COVID and, our life is not the way it was. Mm-hmm. Hey, a family member of mine died and I'm grieving. Mm-hmm. Hey, whatever else horrible circumstance in our life has happened, understandably, like it's been a hairy couple of years. Mm-hmm. But that refusal to accept it mm-hmm. is really challenging for people, right? And they're like, but why can't I like move on? And you're like, because you're still on day 2. You know how like another really great analogy is like, when you go to a conference and it's like a 3-day conference, right? And like day one is like, yeah, it's so fun. I get to like hang out with people and super exciting. And then especially these days, right? When you're like, oh my God, people like beyond a Zoom screen, like you have a body? What? It's like, whoa. But like, day three is really fun also because you're like, you've gotten all this information, you've met all these really cool people, you've done lots of networking and relationship building and all the things. And then you go back, you're like, it's finished, right? There's a sense of completion. Day two has to happen, but nobody loves it, right? Day two, you're kind of like, I'm still here. The air conditioning's getting cold. I really want to like step out for like that matcha latte or like food, but like I feel kind of obligated to stay, but I'm getting tired and things start kind of wearing on you, right? But we have to have day two, right? In order to like link between day one and day three, right? That acceptance. So awareness, action, we need the acceptance piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's powerful. It's powerful because you're right. Like it's hard to move forward when you're resisting certain situations and when you're resisting the reality. And so
Right.
just to push a little bit more, Kyla, because a lot
Yeah.
of listeners and watch and viewers are super high achievers. They've done incredible things in their lives. Um,
That's awesome.
how would you advise or help someone who cannot accept their success?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it really depends on the person, right? Like we've all come from different experiences and different backgrounds, right? In different walks of life, right? But, you know, the thing that and this is kind of another reframe and
Yeah.
how can I say, like a way in which to understand success better visually, because I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
So what I've been coaching around lately, because a lot of my clients are, they're 7-figure earners, and they're just killing it, right? Like really killing it in their businesses and in their lives. Um, but there's this shrinkage, right? Like the shrinking down, and the playing small and things like that, right? And so something that I've been learning and unlearning about success in my family constellations training, it's this other healing modality that I've become certified in, that was founded by this German psychoanalyst, is to think about whose definition of success are you looking at? Okay. So for example, this is what we do. I mean, we have human brains. And so our human brains are conditioned, socially conditioned to think of success as, all right, like a Tesla, check, a house, check, multiple credit cards, check, you know, certain salary amount, check, whatever that list is, right? And certainly for business too, right? There's another checklist. And so what happens when you are focusing all your attention, right? Let's say I'm turning myself to the left, right? And I'm just completely facing society's definition of success, right? And let's say my own definition of success is to the right of me. Okay. And that could be, freedom to travel and be in Eureka amongst redwood trees, helping my aunt pack. Actually, I'm not really, my husband has been. Full disclosure. But supporting, husband to do said move, freedom, being able to be myself, being able to, if live my life without regrets, right? So like I often say, like, if this were my last Zoom call ever on the planet, would I be okay? Yeah, I'd totally be okay, right? And you always laugh about, oh, you're so yourself, right? And that's because for so many years, this is a slight tangent, and then we'll get back to your original question.
No, no,
So many years, 38 years, I was not myself. As a former people pleaser, I was a person who said and did what I thought other people wanted to hear and see. So I never had my own voice, right? And so now, like after like, it's not that been that long, right? 38, 44 minus 38, 6 years that I'm like, oh, I can say that. Whoa, I can do that. Whoa, I can work remotely. Whoa, I can wear Sally on my head. Whoa, right? So it hasn't been that long, right? So anyway, okay, so back to the success. So society's definition of success on your left, your own definition of success on your right? And so before we even get to your question, we have to take a step back and reframe what is success. Okay, so if I am facing to the left society's definition of success, my back is against my own definition, right? So I'm going to keep moving, and of course I'm not going to want that success. Right, back to your question. Of course I'm going to be like, ugh, I mean, at a certain point, right, you can hustle your way to 6 figures, 100K, and then there's going to be a point where, and I've talked to multiple 6-7 figure earners and been in the same room and the same tables of them, there's going to be a point where you're like, wait a second, I'm not happy. Wait a second, this feels icky, right? Wait a second, this is actually not my definition. I don't want to work 24/7. I don't want to subsist on Red Bull. That's like the startup society's definition of startup culture, right? So there's going to be a certain point where you're going to come up against that, and hopefully, right, and it's not too late, and hopefully you're in a space where you can slowly start, right? And you get a coach, right? I have like 3 coaches I work with, but you slowly start turning first to neutral, and then towards what it is that you want, if that makes sense. Does that help to answer your question?
Oh no, I love it. I love it. It's so it's such a great metaphor and analogy to like even be seeing, physically you're walking in one direction with your back against what you really want. And I think that's such a great simple, framework for understanding, hey, are you going in the direction of what society wants, or are you honoring who you want to be in this life? Are you honoring those dreams? Are you honoring those ideas? Are you saying yes to the things that, that bring you joy, to wearing Sally on your head, like all the things that, KYLA, you've been able to show people and role model to people. Hey, if your life right now is not what you want it to be, you have every inch of power to start shifting directions. And I think that's super powerful.
Thank you, babe. Received.
So going back to the original question, as you were speaking, I'm like, oh, this is good, because I want to look at this from a different angle. Someone who has been successful, someone who has achieved a certain amount of income, and they still feel unhappy, or they still feel that, as you were saying, that icky feeling, or something is not right. What do they have to accept, or what is a first, what am I trying to say? What's that first thing that they have to do to start accepting themselves for where they're at and how much value that they have already?
Yeah, I love that. So another really simple tool that I came up with, and this is another story. So Edgar and I, my hubby partner, we were in a taxi in Korea. And I mean, you've taken taxis in Korea, right? Like sometimes the taxi drivers can be a little bit hairy. Like they're usually like middle-aged dudes who don't speak any English, and they kind of yell at you for things that are not your fault.
Yeah.
And so there was one time we were like in this taxi, and the taxi driver was going in, speaking of directions, not the right direction. And here I am like, oh my God, like, we're paying this extra money, like this guy is going the wrong way and he thinks he can fool us because we're foreigners and blah blah. I was going on and on and on. Meanwhile, my hubby, who was like one of the most positive people on the planet and just like overall like amazing human being, goes, well, honey, you know, maybe he just knows a better route. Maybe he um maybe he needs to like beat traffic. Maybe he is really well intentioned and he's just having a tough day, and so he just forgot to make the turn, da 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 da, right? So you can see the juxtaposition of these two responses, right? So if you imagine forgiveness and judgment on a seesaw, okay? So when judgment of self and others is high, forgiveness of self and others is low, okay? And then vice versa. When forgiveness of self and others is high, where we want to be, judgment of self and others is low, okay? So when you ask this question of like, what's the first step? How can we like overachievers, like, accept, our success or even lack of success or whatever, what we really need to look at is the F word in happiness that nobody looks at, right? And that is forgiveness. And it's really quite simple, but it's hard to practice. And that is, okay, I have not, for example, I've been turning towards society's definition of success rather than judging ourselves for doing that, which, okay, like I have been known to be very judgy wudgy was a bear myself, being like, oh, I can forgive myself. I forgive you, KYLA. Like, you didn't know any better. Like, that's a subconscious mind thing. You're subconsciously probably doing it. Maybe you were following other people who were doing it subconsciously. You didn't know. That's okay. We move forward, right? And where we don't want to be, right, is in the judgment zone all the time, because that creates a lot of inner angst and inner stress and not inner peace, right? And we don't long term want to be in stress mode, because 72% more of our diseases, dis-ease, are caused, by stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah. KYLA, can you just repeat that one more time, because it kind of cut off for a second?
Oh, yes.
Percent of go ahead.
The forest Wi-Fi.
You got to show people the redwoods in
Oh,
in the city.
yes.
It's so beautiful. It's just like
this is my
beautiful.
This is my aunt's backyard, y'all.
So good.
I mean, what? So okay, so where did I cut off? And thank you for your patience.
Yeah, so you were saying 72% of, and then it cut off.
Okay, so 72% of dis-ease, right, in the body, not in ease, are caused by stress. Okay, and that's where we do not want to be, right? Because people are always like, well, what's the point? What's the point of hiring a coach? Or what's the point? I mean, valid question, right? What's the point of hiring a coach? What's the point of personal growth? What's the point of it all, right? The point of it all is so you are not in your thoughts and going batshit crazy. That's the point, right? So, and that's important, because when you're not going batshit crazy, you're not in stress, and you're not gonna that's not gonna lead you to that 72% or more of diseases caused by stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's so, yeah, no, it totally makes sense, and it's such a great thing to think about. If anyone listening right now, you feel like you're doubting yourself, you're talking negatively to yourself, like you're saying like, oh, I should have done this, I should be at this point in my life by now. We all have those comments, especially as you're moving towards, past your 30s into your 40s into, middle age. We start to ask ourselves, what have I been doing with my life? And to go back to what you were saying, Kyla, why hire a coach? When I think about it, it's really about how can I shift my perspective on what's possible for me now? Because I see with clients, and even, I mean, it all walks of life, there's a point where you decide, oh, this is all that there is for me. And that's totally not true. And here is Kyla, doing her thing, being her awesome self, showing the world, being a role model. And here I am doing it my way too, just living life the way that I want to live. So I think that's so great. So if you are in that space, get out of the judgment zone and get into the forgiveness zone, bring more peace into your life. Okay, Kyla,
Yeah.
what do you do to shift gears a little bit? What do you do to stay positive when things are not going your way, when things are just falling apart, or you're feeling overwhelmed, or something, crazy happens in your life? What do you do to get yourself not into like happy, happy, joy, joy mode, but just a little bit higher?
Yeah. That's a great question. So recently I turned 44. My birthday was on May 3rd.
Birthday.
And thank you. And, a lot of people were asking, as they do, right? Like, what are you doing to celebrate your birthday? And I thought about that question. I thought it was like a really interesting question because, in society, like if you don't have kids and let's say you're not married, right? There's really only one societally acceptable day for you to celebrate yourself, and that's on your birthday,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And it made me think, right? Like, well, what am I going to do, right? So I went about my day on May 3rd, and it was just like any other day. And I was like, and it made me have this pulpiphany, so to answer your question, I swim when
Mm,
things get hairy, but I always swim,
mm,
right? So I'm swimming when things are good. I'm swimming when things are not so good. I'm swimming when things are really shitty, and I'm always swimming.
mm,
That's a non-negotiable for me. That's in my calendar. My calendar is blocked off for me
mhm,
because that's my personal growth time.
mhm,
That's when the most pulpiphanies come out.
mm.
That's when I'm the most zen. And here's a funny thing to that. When I don't swim, Edgar, my hubby, goes, honey, and he's a very gentle soul. Um, are you gonna go swimming today? I'll be like, no, why? Super like, jumpy and like, bleh. And he goes, well, you're always like so much more zen after you swim. And I'm like, that's right. Okay, I'm gonna go swim then. Bye. So, even coaches, right? Like, because I think the other misnomer is that, coaches and therapists and, people who work in um, the healing industry, like aren't humans, right? And we're just as much humans, and we just as much have human brains with human thoughts that make us go crazy, right? And shit gets crazy. So, but also, I'm an energy healer too, right? And so the water, water represents so much, right? Water represents the purification. Water represents like letting go of any kind of negative energy that I may have um, unintentionally picked up from clients. Water represents also flow, energy flow, creativity flow. Water represents non-judgment too, right? So even if you kick water and you throw yourself onto water, or you are, aggressive with it, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
back, right? It's accepting of you
Okay.
no matter what, right? And so you can also think of it as this metaphor, right? Like, how can we be more? And I'm sure you've seen these like memes or like on social media where it's like, you know, being one with nature, right? What can we learn from and with nature, right? And that's things are going to grow no matter what the circumstances are, right? You know, like when you see my favorite is when you see the little like green plants or the green growth like that are spurting up like in the concrete.
Yeah.
That's who we are, right? No matter what, right? We can survive and over time thrive. And if we don't, that's okay, right? It's not, the end of the world. So yeah.
Good. I love it. It's the consistency of swimming that allows you to not maintain, but just have that anchor. You're grounded in your practice. I love it.
And also, I would just add one more thing. So one of my one-on-one clients recently asked me, like, hey, how often do you swim?
Mm,
And I'm like, the question that we should be asking ourselves, that we could be asking ourselves, is not how many times
mm,
I swim, but when I don't swim, that I don't judge myself and I forgive myself.
mm,
You see what I'm saying?
mhm, mhm.
Because that's when things, right? Like that's the another really cool and easy reframe is the winning results versus the bonus results,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
We spent so much of our lives like in the bonus results of like, I'll be happy when, right? I make my first meal, I make my first, whatever, my business grows to X amount of clients, da 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 da. And really, it's the winning results, right? I want to grow through fear.
mm,
I want to forgive myself more than I judge myself.
mm,
I want to not beat myself up over when I don't do the things that I thought I would do,
mm.
right? So the number of times I swim is a bonus result per week, and not beating myself up over not swimming is a winning result.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
So good. Yes. Everyone that's like, listening or watching this right now, you need to do it 2 or 3 times to pick up all the gems that no, because it's deep. Like you have to let it sink in. I guess going back to swimming, let it all sink in and hear what Kyla's saying that, when you tell yourself you're gonna go to the gym 5 days a week and you're doing it for like, 5 months and you're like, yeah, I'm the best. And then the one day that you don't go, you throw yourself in the curve and say, like, I am a crappy person. Like that's not the point. It's no matter what, know that you're doing your best and keep on going, keep growing, and keeping that positive perspective of yourself because you are who you are. And, we are all human, as you said, Kyla. And so moving into success,
That's the acceptance piece,
acceptance. There you go.
right? That's the day 2,
Oh,
right? Like, even I just want to add, babe, really quickly, even if you're not positive that day, because I hear this a lot from clients,
yeah.
right? Like, why can't I be more positive?
Yeah.
And that's another judgment on yourself,
Mm,
right? It's like, hey, it's okay to accept that today is just not going to be as positive as you'd like it to be. And that's fucking okay,
yeah. Yeah.
right? Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Yeah. I'll just add there's some
Beep, beep.
yeah, beep beep beep.
But yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. It's so good because and I get and it's interesting too, like as you're saying, therapists, healers, coaches are all human too. And one thing that I know that I recently happened to me last week, I was really trying to be super creative this like the whole week and it just wasn't coming. It just wasn't coming. And so by Friday, and I started on
Hmm.
Monday, and here I
Hmm.
am trying to like, get myself in the zone, doing
Hmm.
my, putting on some music, and it just wasn't coming. And I was like forcing it. And so by Friday, And I'm not happy
Mm,
I said this, but I told my wife, I'm like, I feel like a loser. Like I didn't create anything this week.
mm.
And the one thing like that Carol said, she's like, Dom, everything's gonna be okay. And I'm like, you are right, honey. And it's true, like everything's gonna be okay. Like the sky is not falling if you don't produce that one thing, if you miss that, or you forgot, I don't know, your kid's lunch. Like it's gonna be okay. Like you're gonna survive. And I think it's that notion that I still struggle with as an achiever. If I'm not producing, I don't feel good about myself. But then what I'm hearing from you, Kyle, is accept that there's going to be days that you don't produce, and that's just as fine. That's okay.
And I love that. And also that that is society's definition of success,
Yep.
not your own,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So there's absolutely no need to beat yourself up, because if you're living that definition of success of your own, right? Like, for example, being a successful mom, right, is not about, being perfect,
Mhm.
right? Then when you do something that is not perfect, because I mean, we're all humans and so we're imperfect at like baseline, then right there is that alignment for you,
Mhm.
right? Because you are facing your own definition,
Mm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mm. So good. So good, Kyla. So tell us, Kyla, what is your definition of success?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think so recently in my mastermind, my coach, this is actually really cool. Speaking of being creative, so to set the stage, she hid these like 20 questions around the room, and we had to go and find these questions. And my question was like hidden in the freezer of one of those like, super like retro, like the retro fridges that are like
Yeah.
actually new. But they're like, I'm
Love
like
those. Those are so cool. I want one.
the the smeg, I think they're
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like
I know what you're
smeg or
talking
something.
about.
I think it was like yellow, anyway, like Sally yellow. So yeah, so I look in the freezer, and then the question was, I love this question. It was so good. Like my body was just like, like it hurts so good. Um, but it was like really the question found me. It's like, did I really find the question, or did the question find me? And the question was, um, who would I be if I were not trying to be what everyone wanted me to be,
Mm.
including those whom I love and respect?
Mm.
And to be able to answer that question, which I answered as free, full of KYLA fun, and motherfucking enough. That's my definition of success right there. And when I am feeling all of those things, right? Because, in your body, right, we all know what truth feels like,
Mhm.
yet we resist, right? We're like, oh, I'm full of anxiety, but that's the truth. I have to produce, I have to be creative, or, whatever it is, right? I have to achieve,
Mhm.
right? And really, it's like the truth to me is that I'm the full expression of myself,
Mm.
full of kylalility. What is that? That's only something that I can know, and only something that I can be.
Yeah.
Right. And again, turning towards my own definition of success, right? Not society's definition. Because if I was looking at society's definition still, which I was for probably first 38 years of my life, I would be really fucking depressed. Right. And you're laughing. So you know what I mean,
Yeah.
right? By that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I was talking to one of my clients this morning about this. It's kind of like, when there's like a square peg, and you're like fitting yourself a square peg into a round hole, and she was laughing because I was like, you're going like this. Imagine you are that, square peg, like trying to squeeze yourself and fit yourself and holding your breath, and you're like squirming your way, and it's so uncomfortable, and you're like, fuck, am I ever gonna fit? I can't fit. Right? It's like, fuck, it's oops beep, so hey, don't do that to yourself. Right? You already fit. You are already enough. Just by you showing up and listening to this podcast right now. Right? You are already exactly where you need to be, and exactly what you need to be listening to. And if you and what's coming to me right now is, if you decide to stop watching this or listening, no judgment. Right? If you're like, these two, I don't know, stop. Right? Hey, no fucking judgment.
No judgment.
Right?
No judgment.
You are enough. Even if you don't want to listen to this, even if you want to listen to this, even you achieve your goals, you don't achieve your goals, like, you're enough. That's it. Right? If you don't take away anything from what we've been talking about for the last however, like 30 minutes it's been, and only that you are enough by simply being and breathing, that's it. Right? You're golden. Sally sees you. Sally loves you. Just look at her.
We should just have a what is it? An interview with Sally, and she'll just talk and see what Sally says.
Yeah. See, I feel like that should be I'm gonna start a podcast. See what Sally says.
See what Sally says, and you can have people come on and ask Sally, I feel this way, and then Sally will just give it to you and tell you, no, you're enough. You're fine. Everything's cool.
Right? Love it. So good.
I love it. KYLA, how can folks find you? Where are you at on the internet? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a spelling test, because my surname is Mitsunaga, which is Mitsunaga. So it's KYLA, KYLA, Mitsunaga.com, which I'm sure you'll include some links somewhere.
Yeah, I'll include it.
Just go on there and click on there. If it doesn't feel icky, if it feels icky, don't do it, and just take yourself out for like a bubble tea or a matcha or something stronger if you need it. No judgment. But if you feel this resonates and you want to have like a virtual matcha latte day, go on my website. Would love to chat with you. Yeah, it's been really great to be here, and
awesome.
So proud of you, Dom.
Thank you.
Great to reconnect.
KYLA, it's so great to hear, just your frameworks, the golden nuggets that you dropped in this session. We just had a session, guys. Guys and ladies, we just had this is like what a session looks like. This
Sally sessions.
This framework of aware, accept, and action, and spending your time in day 2 and really accepting the situation, accepting where you're at, just accept. And then also this question, I'm like, and it's so visually it's there for me. I'm like, yes, this is it. Am I going to fit? And you're trying to contort yourself and your body and your image and everything about you, everything that's so beautiful about you, just to fit. But the point is, you don't have to fit. You create your own mold. You shape yourself however the heck you want to shape yourself. Sally agrees.
She's like, yeah, don't say it louder.
Say it loud. Oh my gosh, KYLA, such a pleasure to have you on the show. We have to get you back on, when you do your anytime you want. You just want to hop on and be like, Dom, Sally wants to chat. I'm like, all right, that's cool. No, but truly, Kyla, it's such a pleasure to be, your friend and colleague in this space. Folks
Likewise.
listening and watching, please connect with Kyla. She's awesome. She has good energy, and she's living her life, the way she wants to, and see her as a role model and a guide as you're trying to figure out what you want to do, who you want to be, what direction you want to take, and how you want to define success for yourself. So, Kyla,
Thanks so much, Dom.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon.
I had to put my laptop down.